Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The hum of advanced machinery filled the sterile laboratory as Draketh bent over his terminal, the faint glow of holographic data illuminating his chiseled features. His clawed fingers moved deftly across the interface, sifting through lines of genetic code. He hadn't slept in days, but the urgency of his work left no room for rest. A mysterious genetic disease had begun to ravage his people, the Valgryn, a species that prided itself on being the pinnacle of evolutionary perfection. Yet this disease was a cruel mockery of that pride, spreading insidiously through their population and resisting every known treatment. Draketh frowned as another sample yielded the same baffling results. The genetic sequences he analyzed were alien, but not in the way he expected. They didn't align with any known Valgryn evolutionary markers. Instead, they seemed out of place, as if stitched into the genome by an unseen hand. He muttered to himself, running the sequences through yet another comparative model. The results were identical. These sequences were not just anomalies. They were impossibilities. Draketh, came a voice from the doorway. He turned to see Yalric, his longtime colleague, leaning against a frame with a look of caution. "You've been at this for too long. You need rest." "I can't stop now," Draketh replied, his voice taut with frustration. "Something doesn't add up. These sequences, they don't belong. It's as if they were inserted." Yalric's expression darkened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You need to be careful. You're not the first to notice these anomalies, but every scientist who pursued them too far disappeared. The Council buries anything that threatens the narrative of our perfection. Don't be a fool." Draketh's eyes narrowed. He respected Yalric, but the idea of abandoning his research was unthinkable. If the Council has something to hide, then we have even more reason to find the truth. This disease could wipe us out. Yalric, I need answers." Yalric shook his head and left without another word, leaving Draketh alone with his thoughts. Hours later, driven by equal parts determination and desperation, Draketh bypassed the lab security protocols and gained access to restricted archives. The files he uncovered were old, thousands of years old, and encrypted with layers of forgotten security. As he decrypted the first batch, his heart raced. The files were labeled Project Genesis. What he found within shook him to his core. Detailed genetic templates, experimental notes, and crude prototypes of sentient beings. The Valgryn genome, it seemed, had not evolved on its own. It had been engineered from a species called Homo sapiens. The humans. Draketh scrolled through pages of data, horrified and fascinated. Humanity, facing extinction millennia ago, had created a species as a desperate bid to preserve sentience in the galaxy. The Valgryn weren't the product of nature's perfection, but of human ingenuity and desperation. He slumped back in his chair, the weight of the discovery pressing down on him. If the Valgryn were born of human hands, then the disease ravaging his people might be a flaw rooted in those ancient experiments. And if humanity was the cause, could they also be the cure? Draketh's hands trembled as he sifted through the ancient files, the weight of their implications pressing harder with every passing moment. The archived records painted a bleak picture of humanity's past, a species on the brink of extinction. Earth, millennia ago, had become a dying world. War, greed, and unchecked exploitation had ravaged the planet, leaving its surface scarred and its atmosphere poisoned. Faced with their looming annihilation, humans initiated Project Genesis, a desperate gamble to preserve sentience in the galaxy. The files detailed humanity's plan in stark, clinical language. Unable to terraform new worlds quickly enough to sustain their own fragile bodies, they turned to genetic engineering. Their goal was audacious: to create a species capable of thriving in extreme environments where humans could not. The Valgryn were designed to inhabit Vayrines, a harsh and resource-rich planet teeming with volcanic activity, toxic atmospheres, and immense gravitational forces. Draketh's ancestors, the prototypes of his kind, had been built from human DNA but heavily modified. Advanced genetic engineering provided them with heightened physical resilience, faster cognitive development, and adaptive biology that could endure conditions no human could survive. Humanity had crafted them not as equals, but as tools, alas, desperate experiment to ensure that intelligence would endure somewhere in the galaxy. But then, something unexpected happened. Draketh's eyes narrowed as he scrolled through fragmented reports. Humanity recovered. Through innovation and sacrifice, the humans managed to avert their extinction and rebuild their civilization on Earth. As they restored their world, Project Genesis lost its urgency. Resources were diverted away. Missions were canceled, and the Valgryn, still in their infancy, were left to fend for themselves. "We were abandoned," Draketh muttered under his breath, his voice bitter. The files included progress reports that dwindled into silence. The humans never returned to check on their creations. Whether out of guilt, shame, or simply the belief that the project had failed, they left the Valgryn to survive or perish on Vayrines. Yet against all odds, the Valgryn had thrived. Over generations, they built their own society, forged their own culture, and most importantly, believed they had done so on their own terms. Draketh leaned back in his chair, staring blankly at the screen. His entire life, his people had been taught that they were the pinnacle of evolution, the natural result of a planet's harsh environment forging them into perfection. That belief, that pride, had shaped their identity. Now he knew the truth. Their existence was a byproduct of human desperation and abandonment. It wasn't just his pride that was shattered. It was his sense of self. A final file caught his attention, marked with a symbol he hadn't seen before. Inside, a grim note confirmed his worst fears. The genetic disease plaguing the Valgryn was likely a delayed side effect of humanity's rush modifications. The sequences, though brilliant in their design, were imperfect. Time had exposed the cracks, and now those cracks threatened to destroy his people. Draketh closed his eyes, his chest tightening. Humanity had given them life and, unintentionally, cursed them with death. For hours, he sat in silence, wrestling with the implications. Could his people handle the truth? Would they even believe it? He knew the Valgryn government would do everything in its power to suppress this revelation. Yet the disease was spreading, and the answer to saving his species might lie in the very humans who had abandoned them. Draketh rose, his resolve hardening. Regardless of the consequences, he had to act. The truth, no matter how painful, was the only path forward. Cliffhanger. Draketh copied the files onto a secure drive and stared out at the volcanic skyline of Vayrines. "If humanity cursed us," he whispered, "perhaps they can save us too." The laboratory walls closed in on Draketh as he uploaded the files to a secure network, his heart pounding. He sent the truth to a handful of trusted colleagues, knowing he couldn't carry this burden alone. Within hours, whispers of the Valgryn's engineered origin spread like wildfire. By morning, the revelation had exploded into a societal crisis. Across the cities of Vayrines, massive holographic screens displayed urgent debates between scholars, political leaders, and enraged citizens. The once proud narrative of natural supremacy was shattered, replaced with a chilling realization. Their existence was not a product of nature's perfection, but humanity's desperation. Protests erupted in the capital, and crowds swarmed government buildings, demanding answers. "Lies!" one protester screamed into the air. "They've lied to us for centuries. If we were created, what else have they hidden?" The government's response was swift and brutal. Armed enforcers dispersed the crowds with tear gas and energy barriers, branding Draketh and those who believed his findings as traitors. In a televised address, High Chancellor Vorant denounced the false and dangerous claims as fabrications designed to destabilize their society. "We are Valgryn, born of this world," Vorant declared. "To suggest otherwise is treason against our ancestors and our future." But the truth could not be buried. As the files circulated underground, a growing movement called the Seekers emerged, rallying around Draketh's discoveries. They argued that acknowledging their human origins was not a betrayal but an opportunity, a chance to redefine their identity and confront their creators. They called for an expedition to Earth, not just to confirm their history, but to seek a cure for the genetic disease threatening their survival. "Humanity left us to die," one seeker leader proclaimed to a gathering of thousands. "But we survived. Now we must demand answers and a future." The conflict escalated. In some cities, protests devolved into riots as government forces clashed with enraged citizens. Statues of ancient Valgryn heroes were toppled, their legacy now questioned. Schools and temples, long steeped in the doctrine of evolutionary supremacy, became battlegrounds for heated debates. Draketh, now a fugitive, evaded capture by hiding within the underground resistance. The Seekers provided him with a makeshift lab where he continued his work on the disease. His research uncovered another startling discovery. Buried within the engineered human DNA was a fragment encoded with a cryptic sequence. As he unraveled it, the fragment revealed itself to be coordinates that pointed to Earth. This revelation solidified the Seekers' goal, to reach humanity and uncover the full truth of their origins. But for Draketh, the message carried deeper implications. Why would the humans leave a path back to them? Could this be a plea for connection or a trap? Tensions across Valgryn society reached a boiling point. Entire cities were gripped by chaos, and the government prepared for all-out war against the Seekers. But just as the conflict seemed destined to erupt into catastrophe, a new development shook the planet to its core. Cliffhanger. Reports emerged of an unidentified ship entering Valgryn space. The vessel broadcast a signal in an ancient, forgotten language. As the Valgryn fleet scrambled to intercept, Draketh's translator deciphered the message. "This is the Terran expeditionary vessel Hopekeeper. We come in peace." The Terran vessel descended slowly through the turbulent skies of Valgryn, its sleek, silver hull gleaming in the volcanic light. Crowds gathered at a safe distance, watching in stunned silence as the ship touched down on a secure landing pad outside the capital. Armed Valgryn government forces formed a perimeter, their weapons trained on the unknown visitors. The air was thick with tension as the ship's hatch hissed open. A small group of humans emerged, dressed in advanced but utilitarian suits. They moved cautiously, their eyes scanning the crowd with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Their leader, a tall woman with gray-streaked hair and piercing eyes, stepped forward and addressed the assembly in fluent Valgryn. "We come in peace," she said, her voice steady. "We are the Terran Expeditionary Corps, and we seek answers about a project your people may know as Genesis." From his place among the rebel delegation, Draketh stepped forward. His presence caused a ripple in the crowd. Many recognized him as the fugitive scientist who had uncovered their species' controversial origins. He stood tall, meeting the human leader's gaze. "You abandoned us," Draketh said, his voice sharp. "You created us, left us to survive on our own, and now you return as if we are merely another experiment." The human leader, Commander Elena Hart, nodded solemnly. "You're right to feel that way," she admitted. "Our ancestors failed you, and for that, we are deeply sorry. We came here not to claim you, but to learn what became of you, and to offer help." Her words sparked murmurs among the crowd. Draketh could see the conflicted emotions on his people's faces: anger, curiosity, and an undeniable sense of wonder at meeting their creators. Commander Hart explained that the expedition was launched after a long-lost archive of Project Genesis was discovered on Earth. The humans were stunned to find evidence of the Valgryn survival and wanted to bridge the gap between their species. Despite the humans' conciliatory tone, the Valgryn government leaders were less receptive. High Chancellor Vorant and his council arrived on the scene, their authority bolstered by armed guards. "These humans are meddlers," Vorant declared to the crowd. "Their interference nearly doomed us once, and now they seek to undermine our sovereignty with promises of aid and knowledge. We will not allow it." The tension reached a breaking point when Vorant ordered his forces to seize the human ship, threatening to destroy it if they refused to leave. Draketh and the rebel seekers acted quickly, forming a protective barrier around the humans. In the chaos, Draketh took the opportunity to broadcast the coordinates to Earth, hidden in the genetic code, to every Valgryn across the planet. The government's lies crumbled in real time as the truth reached every corner of their society. The climactic standoff ended with Vorntha's resignation and the government's collapse. The rebels and humans worked together to de-escalate the unrest, sharing knowledge and resources to stabilize the Valgryn civilization. In the weeks that followed, tentative cooperation began. The humans provided ancient genetic data and cutting-edge technology to help cure the disease, while the Valgryn shared insights from their evolution and survival in extreme conditions. Draketh, now regarded as a hero, stood atop the rebel headquarters, watching as humans and Valgryn mingled below. He thought of the journey that had brought them here, the betrayal, the revelations, and the fragile hope of a shared future. Perhaps we were their experiment, Draketh said quietly to himself, but today we stand as equals, ready to shape the galaxy together.